everybody, and hopefully you can see my screen. Awesome. All right, so it's 10 p.m. in Sydney, Australia, so forgive me if I'm a little slow. I've been up since 5. I've got little babies. I'm talking today about cyborg design. A cyborg is a half human, half machine. Um, uh, and my agenda is very simple. A quick introduction about who I am, which will hopefully explain a bit about what we're trying to do with Giraffe, or it'll make it easier to understand. Then I'm going to jump directly into Giraffe, and I am going to do a demo, and then there'll hopefully be some time for some questions. So about me, I am an ex-architect. I was an associate at a firm called Cox Architecture, which worked mainly, obviously, in Australia, but also a bit in China, in Asia, sort of APAC. And before that, I was at FJMT. And I was a competition architect. There's a policy in Sydney, which is, like I said, where I'm from, where you get a 10% floor space bonus if you do what is called a design excellence competition. So the commercial sector is incentivized to do these design excellence competitions in order to make more floor space, in order to make more money. And the way the design excellence competition works is that 3 firms are selected. Each one of those firms is paid a small honorarium, and there is an independent jury appointed, and you have to win. It's just, it's competitive. Everyone puts in a scheme. It's very intense. And then the independent jury assesses what is the most excellent of the designs. And that sort of background I loved it for the time. It was, it's very late nights, the classic architecture sort of thing. Wouldn't be doing it now, but it was very influential in what Giraffe is trying to do. So here is Giraffe, okay, which I can see is on the screen, and I'm gonna cannonball through Giraffe, explaining what it does, and then connecting it across in a Speckle into a broader ecosystem, because I'm thinking, most of the people on the call are on the technical side of things, which is where I started as well. Grasshopper. All right, so the first thing about Giraffe is it is a GIS viewer, as in you are in a map of the world. There are no buildings. Some people are building Moon, Mars buildings, designs, Hassel, I think maybe. But almost every single building that every human has ever made is on planet Earth. And architects frequently talk about context, and then they hit File New on Revit or Rhino, and they end up in the gray void. And then they start, first thing, I better import some context. So Giraffe is very different. You are always in the digital twin of the planet. Every single drawing, everything you do is always to scale and geolocated. And the thing with Giraffe is we can bring in GIS data. So I was a GIS analyst for a while after being an architect. And GIS is like mature BIM, right? GIS is older than BIM, but all GIS is geometry plus data. That's all it is. The geometry is generally 2D geometry instead of 3D, which simplifies, removes a whole point on the XYZ. But it is geometry plus data. So for example, if I right click on this geometry, I can hit the database which that geometry resides on, and I can get the metadata, and there it is. So this is public recreation RE1 zoning in Sydney. Now we connect to any geospatial format essentially, because GIS is slightly more mature than BIM. It's, everyone on the planet uses Esri or equivalent, and so you're able to ingest these data sets much more, easily. So if I was in London, I could bring in EV charging stations, climate risk, zoning, historical buildings. In Sydney, I can do the same thing. And normally I'm bringing in layers that are helping me to design well, as in the reason we're bringing these in is because they inform the design of the building, sometimes very crudely, like, oh, what's the zoning? We better know, what it is. But sometimes in far more sort of subtle and interesting ways, like we could bring in terrain or flood, or a great map layer that is very topical in Australia is Indigenous cultures and territories. And this is from a nativeland.ca. So we're bringing in third-party data sets together, and you probably saw a heat island layer pop up there as well. And so I can bring these kinds of layers in, and these layers are informing design at a whole different level. So it's not just a technical engineering zoning like policy legal, it's around actually understanding place, okay? And so then the next thing that Giraffe is it's a sketch tool. I think it's a pretty good sketch tool as far as sketch tools go. It's certainly not Figma. Um, it's sort of 2.5D, and what I can do is I can draw geometries on the map, and I can extrude them. And one of the interesting things about Giraffe is it's a tool built for hacking. It is just JSON. That's the raw. Like if I change that levels parameter in the JSON there to 99 and I hit save, lo and behold, I'll have 99 levels. And if I want to see the evaluated data, what I'm looking at is a GeoJSON, a canonical GeoJSON, which is a data format one of the classic GIS formats, right? We've got geometry of type polygon with coordinates. One of the amazing things we've done at Giraffe is because we're focused on early designers, we can simplify. So we don't support multi-polygons, which is amazing. And there they are, Latin long plus the metadata. We do reproject those coordinates into a sort of a Cartesian plane so that the areas are in meters, unless you're in the US, in which case they are in feet. But all that's happening here is I'm drawing simple polygons, and I can add properties to them. The Giraffe understands some of them, like Giraffe understands color. Giraffe understands all of these properties, which are mainly the SVG, the color properties, but then also building properties. And when I think about buildings, we're thinking about things like floor-to-floor efficiencies, cell efficiencies, potentially things like dwelling mix. We put those properties together in another big JSON, and then we have a sort of a category where I can draw a shape, and I can assign a usage. Our name for category is usages. So if I assign the residential usage to this shape, it inherits all those properties from residential. So if I change residential to like a white color, hit save, then this changes there. All right. So very, very simple data management tool. And the final thing that Giraffe is it's an area calculator. So if I do residential and I go to our urban tab and I draw a boundary, which Giraffe requires, Giraffe instantly starts spitting out information that's useful to me as an architect. So that's planning, floor to skin ratios, max heights, coverages, derived populations, derived dwelling numbers. And Giraffe, you can create any category. So I could create like a demographics. You can do any numerical analysis, like very like Excel style, like number of people. I can pull in the area of what's on the screen, maybe the gross area, and I'll say for every square meter of person, for every 100 square meters, there's a person, right? If that's how I think, and the unit of measure of is people, and I can create a very quick connection. So this is Excel-like. The only difference between this and Excel is you can draw very nicely. So nothing mind-boggling. It's like what you can do in Revit, you can do it in ArchiCAD. You can do it in Rhino if you're using Grasshopper, but we just make it extremely easy. So we've combined three things: GIS and context, very rapid, very simple modeling, and real-time analytics. And the reason we're doing that is because that is the way that design happens. So when I say cyborg designer, the computer handling that stuff, so data management, and data management sort of showing me the data, allowing me to click on it, allowing me to change its colors, and then allowing me to aggregate it up. That's fantastic for the computer. And what the designer can then do is use this to win the project, to communicate to a client, to communicate to the government or to the community, to bring people into the design process and create narrative. So I've got 2 more minutes, so I'm going to do that right here, because I think this is actually very, very important in terms of how we see ourselves as designers, especially in the age of AI, because the narrative with AI becomes the AI did it. Stop. That's enough. There's no more. It is what it is because it is in some sense optimal. And why is it optimal? The AI made it optimal. So I'm not against AI. We like AI, but this concept here, you can see I'm dividing the site up. I'm going to put some park. Sorry, something which I won't have time to show is we've got like a small Grasshopper editor style flow functional block diagram editor. So you can see I've taken that feature, I've randomly filled it, and I've made everything a tree. And I'm starting to talk about principles and design at the same time as having all my areas and all my context. And I'm building a BIM model. One way we often describe ourselves, right? We're like a piece of sort of yellow trace paper or butter paper, and that thick black texture that the director uses to sort of bring people into the project. And the reason directors and senior designers use those tools is because they are the most flexible tools to solve the problem at hand, which is generally, getting consensus about what are the principles of the site, what kind of narrative is going to happen, and how should we move forward on a design. And very few digital tools can keep pace, and the AI tools often get in the way. So we're butter paper with a slight bit, a bit of analytics on it. So a huge amount of our effort is to draw quickly. But the nice thing is, as you're drawing, we're creating this data. So we have this app store, which takes these data sets that you're looking at over here and allows you to apply algorithms to them. Those algorithms can be executed like on the back end, like a hyper, or on Postgres, or on the front end of JavaScript, whatever you want. Put them on Lambda, put them on Amazon, put them wherever you want. One of the ones which we've written is a little exporter into Speckle. And so if I copy paste my token and I give this stream a name, the number of streams I have called demo is fantastic. So there's demo SpeckleCon, and it's posted to Speckle. So if I jump across into Speckle and try and find I'll hit refresh, I think, and see what's been posted. I should have a new stream, which I do, and all the data that it was created in Giraffe is now pushed across into Speckle and is obviously available to be pulled into the rest of the ecosystem to go to that next stage. So you can see all that data, down what the usage is, the residential is kind of nested in there in various ways, is put in there. It's GeoJSON now to Speckle object, and off it goes. So I'll show you, I'll sort of jump from project to project to show you kind of where Giraffe works in danger, if we sort of, when it's being used in anger, should I say. So these are some of the algorithms in our little algorithm editor, creating apartment layouts, not dumb algorithms, like really smart algorithms. You wouldn't award them a bachelor's degree. They're just putting rectangles on a line. But, in concert, you're making some really nice understanding of rhythm. So sort of that Chipperfield, straight up and down checkerboard architecture, Giraffe kills. But you're able to do this at the speed of that conversation and do the design and talk within context very quickly. So our job is to make the butter paper of I guess computational design. Keep the human right at the middle, keep the narrative right at the middle. Generally, what we want, the service of creating better cities, better understood, better engaged, better co-design, without the tech getting in the way. And so loving Speckle in the sense that once we've created this clean data, out it goes. So I have gone over my allotted 10 minutes by 2.5 minutes. I'd love it if there are any questions. Otherwise, what I'll do as I wait is I'll just jump around a couple of projects so you can see some of the other things you can do with this tool.
Hey, Rob. Thank you. There's no questions, but if any questions do pop up, you can always answer them directly in the chat.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you're done with your demo, we're going to introduce the next speaker.
All right. Let me give me 30 seconds. I'll show you this. This is kind of cool. So this is a map of a huge piece of policy here in Melbourne, in Australia. It's a train line. So you're able to look at the policy in.
We're seeing Speckle at the moment. I think you're sharing the.
Sorry, the wrong one. If you see this this piece of policy over here, it's a big train line, 100 billion or something, many millions of dollars. If you're able to map it all out in Giraffe, then there's additional policy layers that you bring in to understand what's going on. But then what's nice is you can zoom in on a precinct and just start modeling and say, well, at the micro, like how are we going to think about this corner of this building in this city? And you want to zoom out and then think about the macro once again, you do it. So that sort of invariance across scale, one tool in multiple scales, we think is incredibly important. And just something that's just really fun in Giraffe. So that's a good thing to end with. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Rob. And you do have one question. What can
No.
be the results of Giraffe in Revit?
So the polylines come out, and then you'll want to extrude them into spaces, or I mean, you could take them out and turn them into walls. You've got lines, you've got the data, and just turn them into whatever you want to. So whether they represent beams, floor outlines, families, if you're controlling the number of nodes, or spaces. Yeah.
Cool.
Normally there's a Dynamo or a Python little script, to read the data and then create the Revit entity.
All right. Thanks again, Rob, and we'll see you soon.